Hey guys, welcome back to my videos, or my channel even. Today we'll be looking at research methods for AQA A-Level Psychology. This is for the 2015 specification, so it's the most modern one available. I will just mention that I do have a bit of a cold at the moment, so I may sound a bit groggy. And I also want to mention, before we get started, that there are certain topics that I have missed out of this because I personally haven't always struggled with them and never really understood them, so I didn't want to pass along incorrect information to you guys. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm aware that there is a great load of videos on YouTube covering these topics. So these topics are tests of correlation, parametric test of difference, non-parametric test of difference, and the chi-squared and sign tests. I will write that list down below, guys, so you can double check it if there's anything you're not understanding. But if you are looking for more information on these topics I've just mentioned, please, I'm really sorry for any inconvenience, but I just didn't feel comfortable worrying that I might pass on the wrong information to you. So with that, like, subscribe, and carry on watching the video, and I hope you enjoy it. And I will put an email down below if you need to contact me, because I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have for anything. So yeah, let's get started. Firstly, looking at the experimental method, the aim is a statement of what the researcher intends to find out in a research study. The hypothesis is a precise and testable statement about the assumed relationship between variables. Standardized procedures are a set of procedures that are the same for all participants in order to be able to repeat the study. Sorry, there is a sort of mix up with the words there, are a set of. Independent variables are directly manipulated by the researcher, whereas dependent variables are measured as they change due to the independent variable. Extraneous variables do not systematically change with the independent variable, but may have an impact on the dependent variable. Looking at the hypothesis, piloting, and confederates. So a directional hypothesis states the direction of the predicted difference between two conditions, and this is also known as sort of like a one-tailed hypothesis, whereas a non-directional hypothesis simply predicts there will be a difference between two conditions without stating a direction, which is also known as a two-tailed hypothesis. A pilot study is a small-scale trial run of a study to test any aspects of the design with a view to make improvements. So they will not necessarily collect a great amount of information from these pilot studies. It's just purely designed to see if there are any issues that need to be worked out before the main study. And a confederate is an individual in a study who has been instructed on how to behave by the researcher. Controlling variables. So the confounding variable is a variables that vary systematically with what is being tested. External validity is the degree to which a research finding can be generalized to other settings, ecological, to other groups of people, populations, and over time, historical. Moving on to internal validity, this is the degree to which an observed effect was due to the experimental manipulation rather than confounding or extraneous variables. Mundane realism is basically just how a study mirrors the real world, and is similar to the ecological validity. Moving on to experimental design, there are three types. You've got repeated measures, all participants complete all conditions, which is good because it doesn't need many participants, although there are order effects such as fatigue and practice. But to counterbalance this, you get these individuals to do conditions in different orders, so A, B, B, A. And then you've got independent groups, in which participants are placed into groups, then tested on one independent variable. With this, there are no order effects, but it does need a lot of participants, and there is not as much control of participant variables. Therefore, but to deal with this, participants can be randomly allocated to distribute participant variables. And then lastly, you've got matched pairs. So this is where two participants are matched by key characteristics and placed into different groups. So these key characteristics could be either eye colour, hair colour, age, etc. And with this, of course, there are no order effects, but it is time consuming. So it's best, but to sort of help with it, you can conduct a pilot study to decide the key characteristics you want to focus on. So then, at least if it is time consuming, you're not wasting as much time trying to figure out what characteristics you want to focus on. So there are multiple types of experiments. Firstly, looking at the laboratory, this is an experiment carried out in a controlled setting. This is good because it has minimal confounding and extraneous variables and is easily replicated, however lacks ecological validity. And I know just a minute ago I said that ecological validity and mundane realism are the same. I'm not really sure why I've put both of them here for the limitations. They're basically just one thing. Moving on to the field, this is a controlled experiment conducted outside of the lab, which has high mundane realism or ecological validity. I think they tend to prefer using ecological validity rather than mundane realism. And also the participants are unaware that they are being studied, so there is no social desirability bias. However, it is time consuming, lacks internal validity, and there are ethical issues as well. Because obviously using a covert method of studying people is not very good. I mean, there are a lot of ethical issues to it. And then you've got the natural experiment, which is an experiment with no directly manipulated independent variable. There is high mundane realism or ecological validity again, but it cannot form causal relationships as the independent variable is not directly manipulated. And then lastly, you've got the quasi, which focuses on a naturally occurring independent variable and is a difference that exists between people. This allows comparison between different types of people, but it lacks internal validity and there is no possibility for random allocation. And also, one thing I'd like to mention that's not on here is the fact that it's very hard to come by a good, I can't find the right word right now, but they're hard to come by, so like they tend to happen after an event and things, and obviously these sort of particular events that would work don't necessarily happen all the time, so it may take a while for an event to happen in order to study it, if that makes sense. Looking at experimental issues, demand characteristics are cues that make participants unconsciously aware of the aims of a study or helps participants work out what the researcher expects to find. Investigator effects are anything an investigator does that has an effect on a participant's performance other than what was intended, which can act as a confounding or extraneous variable. I'm so sorry guys, I don't know what is going on today, I just can't seem to get my words out, but I hope you can sort of see past that. And these issues can be dealt with using either a single blind design, where participants don't know the aims of the study, a double blind design where both the participants and the researcher do not know the aims of the study, or using experimental realism, where if the task is engaging, the participants will not pay attention to being observed. Sampling. This is a method used to select participants or to sample behaviours in an observation. A population is the group of people that the researcher is interested in. So obviously, in general terms, we all think of a population as the population of a country, but for this, the population would be how many people have green eyes and stuff like that. And the sample is drawn from the population, and then findings are generalised to the whole group, or to the whole population. Generalisation is basically applying the findings of a particular study to the population, as I just said. And bias is a systematic distortion in the findings. There is also volunteer bias, as there is volunteering sampling, and volunteer bias is a form of sampling bias, as volunteers will tend to be more motivated, which may affect the results of using that sample. So firstly, there is opportunity, which is basically recruiting those who are most convenient or available. It's a fairly quick process sampling, but the results are harder to generalise with a good range of validity. Random is when you select people in a way that everyone has an equal chance, which is unbiased but is time consuming because you've got to create a list of all the people within a population and then select from it. stratified, which is identifying subgroups according to their frequency and randomly select from each group. So for example, this, say you wanted to do a study based on race, probably not the best topic to use, but it's the first thing I could think of. But say the United Kingdom's population was 70% white individuals, and then 30% was people of colour. If you wanted to use 10 participants in the study, you would use 7 white people and 3 people of colour to match their frequency in the population, which obviously is easy to generalise but is time consuming. Systematic is selecting every nth person from a list. So, for example, you have a list of 20 people on a bit of paper, and then you would select every third person on the list, which is unbiased but not truly random unless the n is used. And again, looking at the volunteer sampling, which is when people choose to take part, you get a variety of participants, but there is volunteer bias, and also it isn't on there, but it is hard to generalise the results to the population. Looking at the types of data available, there is primary, which is when information is gained from first-hand experience. It can be designed to fit. This information can be designed to fit the aims of the study, which is really good, but is time-consuming. Secondary is gaining information from past studies completed by others. This is inexpensive, but the results may not necessarily fit with the needs of the study exactly, therefore can be hard to connect with it. Quantitative data is when a behaviour or data is measured in numbers, so it's easy to analyse but oversimplifies reality and just puts every individual's life into numbers, which isn't the best way to study behaviour. And then you've got qualitative data, which is word and information that can't be counted, basically. So there's detailed information, but it is hard to analyse and compare and create a trend or look at a causal relationship. Here we are looking at the ethical issues of research. So you've got informed consent, deception, right to withdraw, protection from harm, confidentiality, and privacy. So informed consent is when participants should be given comprehensive information concerning the nature and purpose of the research and their role in it. Obviously, individuals may not fully understand the study, but this can be avoided by asking the participants to sign a document or a contract before the research starts. Deception, which is when a participant is not told the true aims of a study. Costs and benefits aren't apparent till the end of the study, but it should be approved by the ethics committee, then a full debrief is given at the end of the study. Right to withdraw. Participants can stop participating in a study if they become uncomfortable or do not feel okay with doing it, but participants still may not feel able to withdraw in fear of spoiling the study or for any other reasons, such as embarrassment, but participants should be informed of their rights at the beginning of the study. Moving on to protection from harm, participants should not experience negative physical or psychological effects, but obviously this harm may not be apparent at the time, so to avoid this you should do nothing should be in the study that is riskier than everyday experiences. Confidentiality concerns the communication of personal information from one person to another and the trust that this will be protected. It can sometimes be possible to work out who a participant is from given information in the research journal. So, for example, they might be down as being a 23-year-old individual with the initials EF, like me, but I'm not 23, so it can be difficult to create an alias for participants that people won't be able to recognise them from. But to deal with this, you can use numbers, initials, or false names to represent participants. And then, obviously, looking at privacy, this is a person's right to control the flow of information about themselves. But this can also include just general privacy. So, for example, you don't want to be studied whilst you're at home, like in the bathroom or something. But there is no universal agreement on what a public place is. But basically, to deal with this, you do not study individuals without informed consent unless in a public place. Observational techniques. There is controlled and naturalistic. So controlled is when behaviour is observed under conditions organised by the investigator. Naturalistic is an observation carried out in an everyday setting in which the investigator does not interfere. And then you've got covert and overt. So covert is when participants aren't aware that they're being studied, whereas overt are aware they're being studied. Non-participant is when the observer is separate from the participants, but participant is when the observer is taking part in the task with the participants. You've also got inter-observer reliability. So this is the extent to which two or more observers agree about observations. And then you've got observer bias, where an observer's expectations affect what they see or hear. Observational design. This is the unstructured. So you've got unstructured observations when an observer records any relevant behaviour with no system, or structured observations when an observer uses various systems to organise observations. You can have behavioural categories when target behaviour is divided into a subset of specific or operationalised behaviours. So, for example, this can be used for the Meltzoff and Moore study, I believe, in the attachment module, where they did facial expressions in front of a baby and then recorded the baby's behaviour to it, or in the strange situation study, looking at attachment types. You've got event sampling, which is an observational technique in which a count is kept of how many times the behaviour takes place. And then time sampling is an observational technique where an observer records behaviour in a given time frame. So, for example, they write down what an individual is doing every 10 seconds, every 15 seconds or something. So, self-report techniques, you've got structured interview. So questions are decided in advance and are not strayed from, easily repeated, but obviously there is interview bias. Unstructured interview, which starts with general questions but lets the participants' answers guide the following questions. These are more detailed, but more skill is required from the interviewer to be able to do them properly. And then you've also got the questionnaire, which are written questions that are often handed out, posted, or put into newspapers. Can be given to a large sample, but obviously this sample is biased because it's sort of similar to the volunteer bias. You've got also interviewer bias, which is the effect of an interviewer's expectations on a participant's behaviour. And then social desirability bias, which is a distortion in the way people answer questions in order to place themselves in a better light. Self-report design. This is when questionnaire questions should be clear, unbiased, and easy to analyse. Closed questions have a predetermined selection of answers to choose from, but they may not give a true answer if the selection does not represent the individual answering them. Whereas open questions invite respondents to provide their own answer. This can provide deal, but becomes harder to compare responses. When writing a questionnaire, you think about filler questions distract from the main purpose, the sequence of questions, sampling techniques, and performing a pilot study to see if any questions need adding or removing, or editing. Correlations and mathematical skills. A correlational hypothesis can be formed from two covariables. These are the two measured variables. A correlation coefficient is a number between +1 and -1, which tells us how closely the covariables are associated. The closer it is to +1 or -1 it is, the more closely they are associated. It can help to show causal relationships, but they may not necessarily be causal, they just happen to fit. So the significant figures are used to simplify a long number. So an order of magnitude 10 to the power of y. You've got measures of central tendency, so mean, median, and mode. Measures of dispersion, range, and standard deviation. Quantitative data can be shown using tables, bar chart, histogram, line graph, and scattergram. Normal distribution is a symmetrical bell-shaped distribution. Skewed distribution is when it has one tail longer than the other. It is positive if it is on the left, and it is negative if it's also on the right. So looking at the mean, median, and mode for this, see if I can try and work out the pen then come out quickly. So to work out the mean, you add all of these together. So it'd be 1, 2, 4, 4, 6, 6, 6, 7. You have to excuse my writing on the computer, it's not very good, but I've never actually done this before. So you add all of those together, can't even think of what it would be, so 3, 7, 11, 17, 23, 29, 36. But then, to get the mean, you'd have to divide it by how many numbers there are there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So then 36 divided by 8 is 8, 16, 24. So that'd be what? 4.5? I'm going with 4.5, so 4.5. I hope that's right. I've just done that off the top of my head. And looking at the median, this is the number in the middle. So you'd count 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are halfway now. But because there is not actually a number there, because it's even numbers, you would pick the number in between those two numbers. So say if it was 6 and 6, the median would just be 6. But because it's between 4 and 6, it would be 5, just because they are in the middle of it. So the mean is 4.5. The median is 5. I hope I explained that okay, just because it's quite hard to explain without actually physically being with an individual going through it. But so it is the number in the middle. Obviously, if it's an odd number, so say the 7 wasn't there, it would land onto the 4. Therefore, the median would be 4. And then the mode, which is the most common number. And looking at this, I'm sure many of you can already tell that it is the 6. So the mode is 6 because there's 3 of them, and there is 2 4s, 1 2, 1 1, and 1 7. Yeah, I hope that makes sense, guys. Obviously, there are many more sources on the internet of learning how to do them if you don't get it. Looking at case studies and content analysis, case studies involves a detailed study of an individual, institution, or event to provide a rich record of human experience. For example, Phineas Gage. This was the gentleman that got shot, or no, he got a spear, went straight through his head, through the bottom of his jaw, his eye socket, and his brain, and still managed to survive. This helps to shed light on unusual situations, but it cannot be generalised. And then obviously content analysis is an observational study in which behaviour is observed indirectly in visual, written or verbal material. If qualitative data is produced, thematic analysis will be used by organising behaviour into identified categories so it can be analysed. This has high ecological validity, but there is observer bias as well. Reliability. So test-retest reliability is when the same test or interview is given to the same participants on 2 occasions to see if the same results are attained. If inter-observer reliability is low, this can be improved by making behavioural categories more operationalised or getting observers to practice more. Validity. Concurrent validity is when you compare an existing test or questionnaire with one you're interested in. Face validity is the extent to which test items look like what the test claims to measure. And temporal validity concerns the ability to generalise the research effect beyond the particular time period of the study. Probability is a numerical measure of the likelihood that certain events will occur. So this is sort of you're more likely to get eaten by a shark than you are to win the lottery. If that makes sense, that's sort of based on probability. So it'd be more probable that you would get eaten by a shark than you would be and you'd be less probable to win the lottery. A null hypothesis is an assumption that there is no relationship in the population from which a sample is taken with respect to the variables being studied. An alternative hypothesis is a testable statement about the relationship between 2 or more variables. A type 1 error occurs when a researcher rejects a null hypothesis that is true, and a type 2 error occurs when a researcher accepts a null hypothesis that is not true. Features of science. So you've got the empirical method, which is used to gain evidence through direct observation or testing rather than arguments. Science is objective, so it's not affected by personal expectations. Studies should be replicable, so findings can be verified. Theories can be constructed to explain facts and enable testable predictions, and hypotheses are tested to assess its validity. Falsifiability is seeking to disconfirm a null hypothesis in order to demonstrate that the alternative is correct. Paradigm shift is when scientific progress occurs through revolutions and social constructions rather than fine-tuning. Scientific process, peer review, and the economy. A part of the scientific process is the peer review, using independent experts to assess the quality and validity of research and reports. It serves three main purposes: the allocation of funding, publication, and assessing the rating of university departments. Psychology can have a massive effect on the economy. It can help avoid irrational thinking. Therefore, because obviously psychology can affect science and the way we think, and therefore people won't be taking as much time off work. It will help people. It will help big companies sort of understand and give more, individuals more holiday time if they feel it will actually improve their company, for example. But I'm sure we all have our own sort of ideas of how this affects the economy. And reporting investigations, lastly, the abstract is a summary of the study in about 150 words, covering aims, hypothesis, method, and results. An introduction looks at a literature review and research aims. The method includes decisions about research methods and designs, participants and sampling methods, materials, procedures, and ethics. The results describe descriptive and inferential statistics and details of qualitative data. A discussion looks at outcomes, criticisms, and implications. And finally, all references are cited. Thank you for watching the research methods video today, guys. I'm currently in the process of making a exam techniques psychology video like I did for sociology on my channel. Obviously, again, sorry for being sort of groggy and ill and not really being able to get my words out. I'm not really sure what happened today, but I hope you can sort of see past that and you still get all loads of great information from this. Feel free to comment down below any questions you might have. And I again want to say sorry for not including the other topics. I just did not feel comfortable covering them when I didn't really understand them myself. I didn't understand them when I was doing my A-levels, and I still don't understand them now. So sorry about that, guys, but I hope you still enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe for more videos. In the future, I'm also hoping to come out with some chemistry and psychology. No, it's not psychology, physics videos. So I have some chemistry and physics videos. And then maybe during the summer holidays or something, or when I get time, I may try and research and branch into other A-levels. So I hope you guys enjoy that as well. Thank you.